Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Myers with Ishmael Interactive. I am joined by CEO Anna Monroe today, and we are going to talk about the government shutdown.
Oh,
Anna,
good.
yeah, tell us a little more about our agenda and what we're going to cover.
Yes, yes. When I came into work today, we walked into Scrum and Aaron was like, "Why don't we talk about the shutdown?" And I was like, I guess we do have a lot of thoughts. So after some planning, here we are. Let's talk about the shutdown because you and I have both been through shutdowns before when we were feds, right? You
Oh
you were
yeah,
one you were in EPA, is that right?
yep. We and
Yeah, the
we
Environmental
got the
Protection
behind the
Agency.
scenes sneak view of it all.
Oh God, really? Oh, okay, can't wait to hear about that. I was in. And this is like the long shutdown that happened. Also, I guess during the first Trump administration, right? Wasn't it during the first Trump administration? And the government shut down for like 30 plus days, and it was quite bad. I was in the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, at the time at the lab. But why don't you tell us? Well, I guess there's a few things, right, about a shutdown to really know. It's the first thing is like a partial government shutdown is such like a weird way to explain a shutdown.
Yeah.
What that means is that there's like no money for next year, right? So the end of the fiscal year in the government is September 30th, which is like pretty arbitrary, but we're going to talk about that at a different time. Um, and Congress hasn't agreed on how to spend the money. And like that means that the government quote unquote shuts down. And what that means practically is that a few people go on what's called furlough, which is unpaid leave. Um, but how do you select those people? I think is like the weird thing. So like I want to hear about your experience in the last shutdown, the really long one. Aaron, because I think it was quite different from mine because I was not furloughed, but you were. Is that right?
Yes, and here's where it gets interesting, because we were also in very different agencies in terms of political scrutiny. Being in OPM
I
during
mean,
Trump
OPM, they
one,
did want to shut OPM down in the last Trump administration.
they,
So
they
like, I
they
don't know. I
did,
don't know.
but they also called EPA the devil. Just generalizing
Okay,
there,
fair.
but yeah,
All right, we're on a sliding scale. I guess you're
yeah,
farther down
yeah.
than I am.
There's
Okay.
differences. Um, and here's sort of what you're getting at is ideally, theoretically, if you have money, because while the fiscal year ends on September 30th, not all the money ends on September 30th, you should be able to operate.
Right.
Now, in the example of my program with the EPA, the agency leadership at the time, and I don't think I'm telling secrets outside of school, this is pretty
Who
known.
cares? That we're not in that school anymore.
Yeah,
Like, choose to
exactly.
leave.
True, true. They decided that there's a level of interpersonal office politics and the perspective that they wanted to give to the administration wasn't fighting to keep people open. It was you say we're going to shut down, we are going to shut down to the furthest extent we can implement. So even though
Wait,
my
why?
program um it was on two levels. One is they know it'll be easier to deal with the interoffice politicals if
Oh,
they don't start fights over who's shut down and who's not, just shut down as much as possible.
gosh. Okay.
And the other one is when you are a political at EPA who serves at the pleasure of the Trump White House, you don't try to keep portions of the EPA open unless you have to, unless it is
Yeah.
mission critical, like drinking water quality, just as an example, or what do we do with toxic waste and
Right.
enforcement of stuff like that, because there's the level of what you can legally get away with, and then there's the level of what you could say in a meeting, and that political is going to look at you and say, "Are you kidding me?"
Right. Got it.
You know. So for that reason, we had money. We're working capital fund, which most people in our audience will be familiar with, but those who aren't, it's just like an overhead charge that other offices that you assist get, and they pay into that pot and you run from that pot. So we had money left in our pot beyond the term of the shutdown, told to go home anyways.
So that was opposite of us. We were also at the lab. We were not working capital funded, but we were fee for service. And so we had ongoing agreements that were already paid. And so we were fine and we were funded. So what this means for the lab at OPM was like people, we were just a bunch of, we were like an internal consultancy, right? And so somebody was like, okay, we want to buy, X package of whatever it was, and they would pay the fee, and we had enough money to keep running because we had all these ongoing agreements that had already been paid into. And then if we ever had an excess, the lab, which I think we did a couple of years when I was there, that went back up into the bigger org because of course no one in the government can make a profit. That's not how the government works. So any quote unquote profit that the lab made, because we're good at our jobs, we were, would go back up to the bigger org and fund things like Aaron's working capital fund. So that's like an internal team that does not have a revenue vertical to keep themselves running, and they are instead funded by pay-ins from verticals that do create revenue. So and every organization has this. Like IT is always a internal kind of, it's what they're called cost centers, which I think is quite unfair. And I address in the upcoming Human Centered Design Delivery Guide why this is a silly way to brand yourself and to
It's a
accept being branded, because that's
bad brand.
not right.
It's a value center.
Yeah, it's a value center for sure, and we do talk about that in the guide series. And so IT, HR, I guess your program, any training programs, things like that are always these working capital funds in the government. So I was not funded. I was not furloughed rather, and it felt weird. It felt really weird because I knew that there were people who were really suffering, right? I knew that there were people who couldn't pay their bills, who were really in a tight spot. And I was just like going to work every day. And we were doing what we could on the projects we had ongoing. But what was it like for you, Aaron, when you were furloughed? Like what happened?
Well, I try to keep perspective because even the people who were going into work, you got to pay your bills, and it's not like you're getting paid.
No, no,
Uh,
we were getting paid,
Okay.
Aaron.
You
Yeah.
were many people who do go into work during a shutdown are not. They
I know,
are
like TSA.
they are working and being told they will be paid in the future, which is
Right.
it's not something you could tell your landlord, no matter how sure you are.
Yeah.
And a shutdown at that time lasting 33 days is just a 3 days longer than a month's rent. So,
I do
some
want to
people got
say,
caught.
yeah, yeah, I think that I think that there were a lot of people who like couldn't, they struggled to buy food,
Yeah.
Like it's not like government workers make a ton of money or anything.
No, my grandmother-in-law works at a food kitchen, and she was telling me the lines were quadruple, 5, 6 times longer than usual during that time. Um, but it's so you try not to put too much emphasis on it because even the majority of the people who go into work are suffering.
I mean, I
And
would say that my suffering was definitely philosophical. I felt like do you know this term is scab? A scab? Someone who
yes,
crosses lines? Yeah. I felt a little bit like a scab. Um it was not great. So I think that the lesson here is that it damages these shutdowns damage sort of everyone's who is involved, right? It does force the politicals who were in the EPA to make kind of irrational decisions in whatever direction you consider irrational, right? Like, is it
yeah.
irrational to kind of 100% shut down as much as possible? Well, is it also irrational to pick and choose? Yes, both, neither of these are good choices. It puts them in a tight spot. Does it put the people who have to go to work and not get paid in a tight spot? Absolutely. Does it put the people who get furloughed in a tight spot? Yes. Does it put people who go to work and still get paid in a tight spot? Yes. And none of this is going to sort of advance the projects and the customer experience when the government reopens, right? Because once you get back to work and everything's back up and running, what happens to those projects? So in your experience when you left work for the 30 plus days, what happened when you came back? What was the change, if any?
We lost our major service for several weeks, which
Whoa, what
was
was that? Describe that service.
regulations.gov, which
You
for
lost
most,
regulations.gov for several weeks?
yes. And
Holy,
the
tell
reason
people
for
what
this,
regulations.gov does.
yeah, regulations.gov is how the general public is able to make a comment on a proposed government regulation before it becomes final. And the government by law
That sounds like
must
democracy.
consider what you say, but cannot if the service is down. So, huge issue, huge, enormous issue. The
Yeah.
problem was, while we had one person left to keep the lights on who did have to go into the office, the people who were behind making sure that web certificates were renewed were shut down.
Wait, you lost your SSL certs?
Yes, yes, and
That's so embarrassing.
it is. It is incredibly embarrassing.
For people who don't know what an SSL cert does on the internet, all it is when you go to a website and it says HTTPS, that means that the servers have had a handshake, a secure handshake, and they have exchanged what's called a certificate. I don't know what that is. A certificate that says hello from the person who's coming. It says hello. I would like to access your information. And the website has said I am this website. I am the correct website. And so you don't get like weird pirate websites or whatever it is. And you can know that this website is secure and it's not under attack from anybody and blah blah blah. And it's to renew an SSL cert is literally a matter of clicking a button like once a year in your
That guy,
host.
that guy was furloughed. Yeah. So
And then the whole website goes down because you can't do the handshake and they have to do the
yes.
handshake or they won't or they can't connect. Yeah.
So this is one of those instances where even the stuff that is still going during a government shutdown is gonna get impacted because there's a lot more interconnected than people imagine.
And
It
that
happens all the
really
time.
affects customer trust, like a lot,
Yes.
I
Oh,
imagine.
wait. But believe me, I was in charge of the survey analysis at the time, and boy, howdy did it. A bloodbath of customer sentiment. That's the
So
only way I could describe it.
that's bleak. I
Yeah.
have to say. So it's like there's no way out of affecting the customer experience when you have to implement something as strange as just saying, okay, we're not gonna have business right now.
Yeah.
That's accurate to say?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I would talk to friends. One of my old roommates was a contractor at the time with Microsoft, doesn't just work with government, works with private industry. And, one of the things I told our old chief of staff is when they were preparing a year or two ago for what we thought could have been a shutdown is even the people who continue to work, even the people who are safe, because our office was safe, we weren't going
Working
to
at
shut
home.
down. I
Yeah.
told her, check in with everybody and ask how they're doing, anyways, because anybody who is doing business in DC anywhere knows somebody who was affected by this.
Right.
If you work in Microsoft or if you work in the local sandwich shop, you have a brother, a sister, a mother, a cousin who is shut down and doesn't know if they'll make rent. That's one of those trickle effects where it just drags the whole economy down because a lot of business runs, if not federal, federal adjacent or geographically next to federal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the reach and integration of the massive infrastructure of our country is like it's difficult to overstate that, right? And I think that for me on my side, when I was in OPM, I did not live in DC. I lived in New York. Um, but the effects were really felt when we came back because
Yes.
all of the project momentum was kind of gone, right? Like we had to sort of like, I mean, we were able to get it back and then kind of like just relentlessly push. But it was hard because of these knock-on effects of the shutdown, just morale and momentum were lost. You kind of like where it's kind of like a giant game of like where are those notes from that thing that we did like 30 days ago. And it really does disrupt the employee experience, obviously, and also for us, the client experience, the people with whom we were working in other agencies. Um, Trainings that were supposed to happen had to be rescheduled. We all know how scheduling is like just a time suck. Now, talk about a cost center, scheduling. That is a cost center.
Yeah.
Um, it was just not good. And so I guess there's no getting around the fact that like one part of the government, one part of an organization causing business to go offline in any proportion is going to affect the overall customer experience and the overall employee experience that that organization has to support to be successful. And I think that for me is the saddest part is that it doesn't matter whether you agree with the shutdown or not. If you want the thing that you wanted, or if you want like sort of stability and not have to think about the infrastructure of our country, which I think is what most people want,
Yeah,
this is just not the way to go about it,
we
right? Like,
shouldn't be in their
I would
minds.
love it if things were just always boring. Just like boring, boring. Give me boring infrastructure. I never want to hear or think about it.
So to me, this comes back to a phrase that I know from previous conversation kind of has gotten on your nerves before.
Oh, good.
It's the concept it's the concept of decentralizing the designer. And there's this perspective that people outside the system have where everything should be so oriented and pointed at the customer that the condition of the person behind the screen doesn't factor into it.
Oh, yeah, that does irritate me. You're
Doesn't
right.
become a thing. And I think whether we like it or not, the quality of life, the how time is spent, there's always a person ultimately behind the screen. Whether
Right.
you're dealing with a government service or you're picking up your Big Mac, there's always a person behind the screen. And they have to have sort of a sustainable level of mental health, of security, of meeting their basic needs in order to keep that service running. Or you're going to start churning people, having to let go of people and hire new people, which has its own overhead.
Oh my gosh, so much. I
Yeah,
think I wrote really early in Ishmael Interactive. I think I did some analysis on how much churn costs. And so I'll link to that in the show notes for this episode. I would agree. It's also, you tend to take a kind of very like individual view. I tend to like to look at organizational health because I love the fact that organizations, I feel like it's a big secret, organizations don't exist. Only collections of humans exist, right? Like
yes,
I love it when people talk about organizations like they're alive. It's like they're not alive.
no,
They can't die. They can't like they don't I don't know, they don't have like children that they care about in the same way that we care about children. I really, really dislike a situation in which that organization on the other side of the screen is not, it's more like a garden and it's constant gardeners, which I guess would be your person behind the screen, are not being treated well or not able to sustain their work because building an organization is amazing, right? Like if you have been a part of a institution that actually functions in a way that produces uh, good in the world, whatever your definition of good is, that's amazing. And I don't have to agree with you whether or not you think that institution is good, right? Like, I personally believe that the EPA is a good institution, right? Do I think that everything the EPA does is great? No, I do not. But like, I think it's amazing that it exists.
yeah,
And the idea that we damage organizations intentionally is like so sad to me. Do I think that organizations need regulation? Yeah, because they're not human. But like, we need to remember that all organizations are collections of humans, that they shutting them down does nothing but sort of like damage what the miracle of their existence, for lack of a better word. So I think it's a complex topic. I think that there's a lot going on with the interplay of organizations and regulation and democratic society and things like that. But at the end of the day, kind of saying like, well, we're just not going to do this from September 30th to October 1 is like, it's just not a good plan, you know?
no, no, it's hard. And I can guarantee you the result of this shutdown will cause a temporary bump in churn and having to get rid of people who just don't survive the experience and having to hire new ones and losing institutional knowledge and having to build it back up again. And for a
Well,
while,
institutional knowledge cost, man. We got to do
yeah,
an analysis on that. There's got to be some way to quantify that.
there has to be. I'm sure you could probably do some sort of benchmark and regress out the other factors.
I will
But
talk to you when I get there.
yeah, yeah,
Where I
this is
use the
why I'm
word
chief data
regression, it becomes
officer.
your job. That's how
Yes,
this works.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But for a while, just to borrow an analogy, it's there's going to be pockets of government that are playing Major League Baseball with people they just called up from AAA. That's just the nature of
Doesn't
the
seem like a
thing.
winning strategy. Yeah.
No,
Oh God.
generally not. You hope for the best. You
Anyway,
hope it's not too big, but here we
yeah.
are.
Here we are. Here we
And
are.
and I'm making no statement on the argument of why we're shut down or what should be happen or what should happen to resolve it. These are just the facts of what shutdown is like.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. So I think that yeah, there's no getting around this is terrible for customer experience, it's terrible for organizational trust, it's terrible for the individual level, and it's really bad for the organizations that are involved and their health and stability because those are just people. So yeah, today just wanted to share our experience with like the previously longest government shutdown ever, where you got furloughed and I stayed in. We both encountered like some really big setbacks in our work as a result. Like you had to deal with a bloodbath of a bad customer sentiment, which
yes,
is never good because of an SSL cert. I can't even believe that. And like all of our projects had to get rescheduled, and scheduling is just a cost, right? I
yeah.
mean, that's just a cost. So, yeah, we'll see how it ends, right? We'll see where this roller coaster ends. Like it just never who knows? We're like in the tunnel. We can't see the end, right?
It it will eventually. We
Yeah.
we also were talking previously about the topic of the certainty or uncertainty of whether or not you get paid. Um, I pray to God people
Yeah,
get paid. They need that. This is one of those things that is also affecting the effectiveness of everybody who's currently at work because you're dealing with the extra stress.
absolutely. I had forgotten about that reinterpretation of the 2019 law that came down just last week, right? So there's a 2019 law, for anyone listening who doesn't know, that stated that during a federal shutdown, furloughed federal workers will get their back pay. Like that was the purpose of the law, and
Yep.
President Trump, in his first term, signed it into law. The what OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. I was like, what does their acronym mean? Um, recently, last week, issued a reinterpretation of this law that said that federal workers wouldn't necessarily get paid unless when Congress funds the government and ends the shutdown, Congress explicitly states that federal workers will be paid, which I'm not gonna like scrub in on my opinions of that. I think it's like, if you're a logical person, you can probably figure out like what I think of that. But like that is so stressful. Like that is so stressful to me. I mean, like, and
Yeah.
also and this is like might seem like a smaller thing, but like, what do you do if you're one of those groups that gets funded out of like people's like withholdings from their paychecks? So like, what does a big health insurer like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna do if those paychecks aren't getting issued? Do people lose their health insurance? Does your health insurance go on furlough? Does anyone know that? Like, I'm it's just like,
I don't
and they're never
know.
gonna get that money, maybe. I don't know.
I don't I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm not going to weigh in on the validity of it. People have always been paid during government shutdown in the history of government shutdowns.
I didn't know that. That's good.
And they have the ability to say and do whatever they want and put it up to legal challenge. But when you consider that it's real people behind the services that are still continuing, if you want them to be effective, this doesn't seem like the move.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe you don't want them to be effective, but it's even beyond that. Like there's certain things like TSA that just like they have to keep going.
Yeah.
But I
Oh,
guess
I know
it depends on
people.
what level of chaos monkey you are, I guess.
Yes, yeah. I know people who were considering during the 33 day quitting because at least unemployment would.
Right.
So they were trying to get fired so to collect unemployment so they could at least survive. I can't blame them.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Goodness. All right, well, we'll see where this ends. This is We did want to just drop in on this topic because we've both been through such a long government shutdown. You had different experiences,
Too big to
and
ignore.
yeah, and to emphasize that like this is customer experience. Employee experience is customer experience. They're
Hmm.
inextricably linked. And it's really important to talk about this if you're serious about providing excellence in customer experience and
Absolutely.
human-centeredness in your organization. So, Erin, take us home here, and
Yeah.
we'll see you next week.
From us here at Ishmael Interactive, it was, well, a grim topic, but a pleasure talking to everybody. And I just want to reiterate and echo Anna's statement: employee experience and customer experience, you can't have one without the other. And hopefully, this government shutdown will end soon so we can get back to both.
Sure.
Thank you.
See you later.